What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tomatolito Show. And one card down so far, or maybe two, I guess we could say, with Teofimo Lopez testing positive due to COVID earlier this week. His fight with George Kambosos and the entire card, for that matter, the entire Triller card got moved over to August 14th, I believe is the date that they chose or that they announced. So it's going to be delayed by 2 months. This was one of the heaviest weekends for boxing this year so far. There was going to be 4 major cards, with one that's grabbing people's attention because of the exhibition type matches that it's going to be hosting, and that one is going to be in Mexico. That's the one where the one I'm talking about is going to be with Chavez Sr., Julio Cesar Chavez, the legend, the Mexican legend, facing off against one of his former foes, the son of one of his former foes in Hector Camacho Jr. So that's going to be the main event for that exhibition card, in which they're saying that the kings or the legends will meet. Chavez Jr. is going to be, and he missed weight at that. Go figure, right? Nothing new there. He missed weight, and he's in an exhibition match, very similar to the trend that we've been seeing as of late, as he's going to be facing an MMA star, a boxing boxer versus an MMA star. He's going to be facing the legendary Spider Anderson Silva. And then I believe Omar Chavez, the brother of Chavez Jr. and the son of the legend, he was going to be in a fight as well. So that's the exhibition one, right? The main two, the top two are the ones pulling. I think Omar Chavez is going to be fighting one of Canelo's brother, if I remember correctly. I'm not too positive on that, but whatever. The main two are the ones that are pulling some eyes that way towards Mexico. That's supposed to take take place here in a few hours. The Teofimo Lopez George Kambosos card was the one that was definitely leading the charge for today. That with Lopez testing positive for COVID, like I mentioned, that card ended up getting scrapped and moved, not scrapped, but delayed, postponed, I guess, for 2 months from now, mid-August. So that leaves us with Jermall Charlo versus Juan Macias Montiel. That's going to be the PBC card tonight. And the supporting card, they have Francisco El Bandido Vargas making his return. He's going to be facing Isaac Cruz. So that should be a good supporting card, good supporting co-main event. And Francisco Vargas is never in a dull fight. Great fight there. Isaac Cruz is a come-forward slugger-type fighter. So that should be a good supporting card for the main event, where Jermall Charlo is going to be putting his title on the line against Juan Macias Montiel. And the other card, Top Rank, is going to be on ESPN. They got the Monster making his return, Naoya Inoue against Michael Dasmariñas. Naoya Inoue is looking to defend his title. Dasmariñas is a come forward type fighter. He's long, he's rangy, he's a skinny type fighter with rangy arms, and he often gets caught in the slugfest type fights. He likes to fight on the inside a lot, or at least he gets baited in quite often, where he tends to drop his guard. And but he's got long, rangy arms, good power behind his punches, and it's going to be hard for Naoya Inoue to get in on that reach. But the Monster usually figures out his tasks and overcomes those obstacles. I see this fight going Inoue's way by stoppage, maybe around the middle rounds. Same thing for the Charlo main event. I see him stopping Montiel. Charlo has their similar reach, similar height. Charlo uses his reach and his height fairly well. Charlo has a lot more output than what Montiel offers. So I think the jab, the boxing is a little bit better. The speed's definitely in the favor of Charlo, but the boxing's a little bit more refined on the Charlo side than that of Montiel. And that's not saying that Montiel doesn't have good boxing. He does. He delivers. His delivery is always a little bit slower. And definitely it's going to show against Charlo that he's going to be a step behind as far as speed is concerned. He's more of a power puncher. I think for him being as much a power puncher as he is, I think he's going to be surprised that Charlo also has some good pop behind those punches. I see Charlo cutting him and possibly stopping him in the middle rounds. For Naoya Inoue, I see similar. I see Naoya Inoue being too much, his output being way too much for Dasmariñas. Dasmariñas does pose a threat. I think this is going to stop in the later rounds. I think, it's going to be a bloody one. And I think unless Dasmariñas is able to focus and pinpoint that damaged cheekbone that Naoya Inoue suffered against Nonito Donaire back in 2019, the orbital bone area of Dasmariñas is able to expose that and exploit that injury, then we may see the flow change a little bit. But I think Inoue is going to come forward. He's going to counter well. His speed's going to be too much for Dasmariñas, and the power is there to back up the flow of attack that Inoue offers. So I see him doing fairly well. Like I said, Francisco Vargas back in action against Isaac Cruz on the undercard of Jermall Charlo and Montiel. That card's going to be kicking off here in the next hour or so, maybe a couple hours. And then as well as the top rank one should be kicking off maybe about an hour after the PBC card kicks off. So that'll be the top rank. PBC has Charlo and Montiel. Top rank has Inoue with Dasmariñas, and the supporting card is really interesting. The supporting fight for Inoue is none other than Michaela Mayer making the first defense of her WBO title against a veteran of the sport and a former two-time champion in Erica Farias, who's been in there with the best. Her last two fights were 2 losses and back-to-back losses against Jessica McCaskill. So those are the last 2 fights that she had in her career, and that's dating back to about 2019. So she's been away from the ring for quite a while, but she's been at it for a while, and that's going to be an intriguing matchup and pretty interesting to see Michaela Mayer defend her first or defend her title for the first time. And then to open up the ESPN card, it's another interesting firework type fight where these two are fast punchers, up and coming prospects. Ivan Dogbo actually has been around for a little bit longer than Adam Lopez. So it's like the prospect against the veteran in this one. Dogbo's not a journeyman, but he is a veteran of the sport, and he's right there. He's within a couple fights, 1 or 2 fights, maybe 3 fights away from trying to get back into title contention. So Ivan Dogbo against Adam Lopez should be a fireworks style fight where that's the right match to kick off the televised portion of the card for Top Rank. So good matchmaking on that behalf, and so. With those two, with mentioning Teofimo and Cambozo's not happening tonight, that ended up opening some room for some breathing room as far as attention goes, as far as schedule goes, and as far as being able to enjoy the fights. That Teofimo card falling off opened up some room, gave us some leeway here to be able to pay attention to more of the other fights that are available. And the exhibition one that we're mentioning between Chavez Sr. and Camacho Jr., and then Chavez Jr. against Silva, that one is definitely the last one that I'm going to be checking out. The one that's already out of the way is the Jaime Munguia Kamil Szeremeta. So what happened here? That fight ended already. It was in El Paso at the Don Haskins Center. 3 good fights that came out of that. Very good undercard, by the way. Very good undercard, entertaining fights. But when we got to see Marlen Esparza against Ibeth Zamora, Marlen Esparza making her first charge for a major world title, and against Ibeth Zamora, who is a long-reigning WBC champ. Everything that I saw in this fight, leading up to this fight, the fights that I've seen of Ibeth Zamora in her past, they're very similar pace, very similar grueling, hard-nosed, come-forward type boxing type matches where Ibeth Zamora releases a few punches in succession, gets hit a lot, slow in her delivery, has flurries from time to time, but very far in between, often takes a lot of damage. And Marlen Esparza, in my eyes, had the little bit better refined boxing, better boxing skills, a little bit more versed or better versed as far as boxing is concerned. former Olympian, and she's been showing that every fight she's been improving. As of the last few fights, she tends to rush out of the bell, just come out guns blazing and start hunting her opponents down. And that's something that I've noticed in the last few fights. She definitely tried to do that with Marlen Esparza, where it backfired. She did it with Suleiman Urbina, where it kind of paid off for her. And then in her last matchup as well, earlier this year, she tends to answer the opening bell by just crossing the ring quickly and start attacking, just letting her hands fly, just gets the nerves out of the way and just gets her hands dirty right away. So she ended up doing the same thing today. She ends up crossing the ring, just getting in the mix of things, and the output that she starts these fights off, it almost ends up backfiring, right? Why did it backfire against Marlen Esparza? Because Estrada has boxing to back up her end. She didn't get intimidated. She was willing to meet force with force, and it was a bit of a car collision there for a while, and Marlen Esparza started pulling it away by mitigating the output and meeting the challenge by putting out heavy output with great combinations and catching Marlen Esparza more often than not. Marlen Esparza comes out guns blazing once again against Ibeth Zamora. Zamora, to me, her boxing is not bad, but her boxing is more of a slugfest style. And like I mentioned, she tends to leave her guard down a lot. She tends to get hit a lot. She's usually marked up quite a bit. Marlen Esparza tried to take over this fight, and maybe she saw weaknesses in Ibeth Zamora, but she didn't count for Ibeth Zamora's experience to come into play. And Zamora ended up pacing herself. She wasn't used to the onslaught, but she ended up pacing herself. She gathered her composure early as she got hit real early in the first round, and ends up setting the pace. She ends up taking control of the pace for the rest of that first round, and ends up catching Marlen Esparza on a weak left jab and drops Marlen Esparza in the first round. Flash knockdown at that, but drops her. Sends a message like, you're not going to be rushing into me. Not today. Not today. And Marlen Esparza got back. Credit to her, because she got back. She got her head under her legs under her, and she ended up going back into the attack. Right off the bat on the second round, she does the same thing. She goes after Zamora. She's hunting him down. Where it doesn't pay off for Marlen Esparza is the fact that she lacks a little bit of power behind her punches. So that style of fight is not conducive for her as she continues to face better opposition, because the power is not there to back up the volume. So therefore, that volume would be like a Mike Tyson type hunting down that she's trying to employ into the ring, but the power's not there. So she can't really hunt them down and just demolish the opponents like she's trying to. The power's not transitioning there. So it becomes a slugfest type fight. Ibeth Zamora did that. She starts countering. She starts hitting the body of Marlen Esparza quite often. The fight ends up going the entire way. And at the end, Marlen Esparza walks away with the decision. But going towards the end of the fight, I had Marlen Esparza up. And the knockdown is what people couldn't forget. The knockdown happened early in the fight, so early in the fight that people could possibly dismiss that. So you couldn't discredit. The fight was close. I had Marlen up by a round, but with that knockdown coming into play, it very well could have been a draw. Now, did Marlen Esparza do enough to take this title? When the decision got announced, Marlen Esparza got the nod. She is the new world champion, and she took the strap from the long reigning champion, Ibeth Zamora. People booed. People were booing. You saw the expression on the Zamora side where they were in disbelief. They did not obviously agree with it. This was not a performance of a lifetime where it was inevitable that Esparza was going to get the decision. It was that close of a fight. And it was so close where the champion should have gotten the chance to retain this title. I think there was one scorecard that really angered people. And if I remember correctly, I know it happened just a few hours ago, but if I remember correctly, the scorecard read something like 97-92. So it was like a 5-round landslide for Esparza. And it definitely wasn't that. It definitely wasn't a landslide. Where I saw the judges getting swayed was the the output of Esparza. She tried, she was making the most noise, she was pressing the action constantly, she was going after Zamora, where it turned Zamora into more of a counterpuncher for the fight. And the few times in the last few rounds, the latter rounds, Esparza started gassing out a little bit. She started slowing down a little bit on her attack. Zamora started hunting Esparza down, walking towards her and landing, having success by landing good punches to the body and good combinations from the body upward to the head. Landed some strong left looping hooks and right hands that ended up shaking Esparza a bit. So if it was that close of a fight, and it would have ended in a draw, which it was definitely looking that way towards the last round, I think the champ should have retained her title. Nonetheless, I could kind of see the argument going both ways just because the fight was that close. And in this instance, leave it to the judges to basically spit on what was a good fight. Because of that one judge that gives a landslide. I don't know what the hell they're watching, but leave it to the judges. This is not the first time you guys have made me or heard me mention this year. And we're 6 months into this year, and we've already had a lot of bad decisions, or a lot of individual judges that have made a lot of bad calls with these landslide scores. The one that obviously pops to mind is with Andy Ruiz and Chris Arreola. Leave it to the judges to get the booing out of the crowd and to just basically take away from the fighters, from what the fighters were able to do in there. It is what it is. Marlen Esparza is the new WBC champ, and she got her hands around a major world title. So congratulations to her. She improves to 10-1. From there, we move on to the co-main event, which was a knockout, drag-out type fight. We knew it was going to be this. I thought it was going to be a bloodfest. It wasn't, but it was definitely power versus power, and it ended up being timing and boxing that ended up playing the factor against the power puncher and the muscle. Bektemir Melikuziev ended up fighting Gabe Rosado. Melikuziev is the prospect. He's supposed to be Golden Boy's next Triple G. He's the demolisher. He's supposed to be destroying opposition. Very young in his career still. And he faces a true veteran in Gabe Rosado. Now, as far as this fight was going, it was really, it was just like a knockout, drag-out type fight. We knew it was going to go that way. And Melikuziev started setting the pace by way of his power. He started imposing his will by way of his power, and he started walking Rosado back. Rosado, of course, resorted to his boxing, to his countering, and his speed to get him out of trouble several times. Melikuziev ends up dropping Rosado down in the first round, and Rosado just basically trying to weather the storm because Beck came on very, very strong. By the second round, they continued to exchange heavy punches. Rosado had some really good moments in that second round. Melikuziev, of course, the power was very significant to where even if Rosado was blocking the punches, he was still getting pushed back and he was still moving because of those punches, even though he was defending fairly well. By the third round, the power again, at one point, Bektemir Melikuziev hurts Rosado to the body, where Rosado ends up leaning towards the ropes. He starts guiding back, stepping back, trying to grab a breather, and he does. He ends up controlling the spacing. The spacing and the timing started shifting in the way of Rosado. He started reading how Melikuziev was attacking him. Melikuziev, very smothering style, just in your face, and he was hunting Rosado down with success because he had the power, and Rosado had to time him. It was this random moment of excitement that happened in which Melikuziev continued to try to walk Rosado down, and Rosado caught him with a beautiful, beautiful punch to the chin, right on the button where Bektemir Melikuziev drops face first in what was a freak of a knockdown. Right away, people, not just the commentators, but you start reading comments on social media, and right away people are already gracing this as possibly the knockout of the year. At least a candidate for knockout of the year. We're halfway through the year, and it was a beautiful punch that Rosado caught him with. So much power. It reminded me over of the MMA fight between Anthony Pettis and Wonderboy, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, where Wonderboy's the one, the bigger body, the taller body, walking down the smaller Pettis, and Pettis bounced off the fence, caught him with the Superman punch, and put Wonderboy's lights out. This is exactly what that was. Bektemir Melikuziev keeps walking Rosado down. Rosado had that little bit of spacing that he was able to gather and gain, and threw a beautiful punch right to the button and drops Melikuziev on his face down on the mat. Melikuziev tried to answer the call and topples over towards the right side of his body, unable to get up, unable to answer the call. The fight is stopped, and Rosado comes away with an exciting win. And what a stamp, what a bounce back from his last debacle of a fight that he had against Danny Jacobs late in 2020. This is a hell of a bounce back, and this is a traditional veteran versus up-and-comer. Rosado's supposed to be that name on the resume like he has been in the past for many other fighters. He was supposed to be that name on the resume to add a little more legitimacy to Melikuziev. Now, Rosado throws a wrench on the career of Melikuziev, and back to the drawing board for Melikuziev's team, and now there's a weakness. Now there's a chin that got exposed. Rosado, the true veteran that he is, he's a fan's fighter. He's must-watch TV at all times. He entertains you in any fight that he gets involved in. And at the end of the fight, he ends up calling out Jaime Munguia, which is very, very curious, but he calls out Jaime Munguia. Again, last fight against Danny Jacobs, he was fighting at 168, a super middleweight. Now he comes back and makes his mark at 160 again. The man has been all over the place as far as divisions are concerned, and he will step in the ring against anybody. Rosado is must-watch TV. I've said that before, and I'll stand by it. Impressive knockdown on Rosado's behalf. Impressive. Knockdown and knockout. He gets dropped in the first round. Bektemir Melikuziev gets dropped in the third and doesn't answer the call. And Rosado gets that knockout victory. Amazing victory. Congratulations to Philadelphia. Congratulations to Puerto Rico as well, because he comes from Boricua roots. And congratulations to the King, Gabe Rosado. Then we get to the main event, and Jaime Munguia slated to fight Maciej Sulecki, who would have been the toughest opposition to date. Jaime Munguia walking into tonight as 36-0 with 29 knockouts. Maciej Sulecki would have been hands down the toughest opposition to date for Jaime Munguia. That fight fell through, and the entire card got delayed to tonight. That card was supposed to have happened in late April. Maciej Sulecki was out due to injury. They replaced Maciej Sulecki with up-and-coming prospect Demetrius Ballard. He ends up falling out of the fight because of injury, and the whole card ended up getting postponed to tonight or earlier today. Maciej Sulecki got back in the running. He was supposed to be Munguia's opponent, and Maciej Sulecki again pulls out at the beginning of the month for undisclosed reasons this time. No more revisiting the idea of Demetrius Ballard or anybody else. The Zone got involved, and they end up bringing in Kamil Szeremeta in just over 2 weeks' notice, or maybe I should say in just less than 3 weeks' notice, for Kamil Szeremeta to step into the ring and face Jaime Munguia. Now, it was very obvious what was happening here. Why I was so attentive to this fight. When the Zone ended up pulling this off, and Golden Boy, they end up putting this fight together with the opponent of Kamil Szeremeta, is very obvious. Jaime Munguia has been calling out Canelo for several years now. When Jaime Munguia was going from 154, making his move to 160, he was willing to move up at that time when Canelo was campaigning at 160. He's been calling out for Triple G for the last 3 fights since he made it to 160, and And he hasn't gotten any of those opponents. Boo Andrade is out there, and Jermall Charlo as well, who we're going to see later tonight, right? And we just talked a little bit about his fight earlier. Now, Jaime Munguia has been calling out Triple G. Kamil Szeremeta was 20-0 when he faced Triple G last December, 6 months ago, and he suffered his first loss at the hands of Triple G. It was a one-sided beatdown, a one-sided affair that Triple G put on that night. And he stopped Kamil Szeremeta in 7 rounds, where Szeremeta failed to enter the bell in the 8th round. The same exact fighter stepped into the ring today. There was no improvement, no changed fighter, nothing. We got the same Kamil Szeremeta that we saw in December stepped into the ring today. Why was this so important? You could see it from the beginning, right? That the moment that this fighter got involved, and Jaime Munguia has been calling for that big name fight, especially as he's called out Triple G, they put an opponent in common. The common denominator would be Kamil Szeremeta. Look at what this young prospect could do with this guy, with this opponent, and look at what Triple G was able to do to him. If Jaime Munguia would have gone all the way to a decision with this guy, you bet that he would have thrown an opportunity of a lifetime away, because they're basically handing him Triple G by having put this opponent in there. If he would have gone to decision with Kamil Szeremeta, it's basically like, all right, maybe you will face Demetrius Ballard on your next outing, or maybe they even try to make the Masir Sulecki fight for a 3rd time, or somebody else. If he stopped Kamil Szeremeta between the 8th and 12th rounds, which is where Triple G stopped him at the end of the 7th, or who failed to answer the 8th, right? Szeremeta, so I guess in 7 rounds. He stops him in 7 rounds. So if it would have gone from anywhere between 7 rounds and the 12th round, and Munguia is able to stop Szeremeta, the conversation would be attractive, where it's like, look at what Triple G did, and look at what this young prospect just did with the same common opponent. Look at what they were able to do. This was the same guy that showed up, that stepped into the ring against Triple G, stepped in today against Jaime Munguia. Jaime Munguia, if he's able to stop this guy any sooner than 7 rounds, in 7 rounds or less, then you bet that would be a huge selling point for DAZN by using this one guy, this opponent in Kamil Szeremeta, as the common factor for the 2 fighters. And you could sell this fight. The aging Triple G, who's in the latter end of his career, against a young prospect who has questionable defense, limited defense at that right now. Subpar defense, I guess you could say, in Jaime Munguia. Now, let's look at this. Jaime Munguia ends up stopping Kamil Szeremeta in 6 rounds. Szeremeta's corner does not allow Kamil Szeremeta to answer the call to start the 7th, and he surrenders in the corner. Jaime Munguia stops him 1 round earlier than Triple G. The conversation is there. The kid is ready. Right away. The comments on social media came out to defend Jaime Munguia, and the excuses and the justifications. He's not there yet. He's still this. He's still that. Maybe 2-3 more fights before he faces the big dogs. And how much more do you want to baby and coddle Jaime Munguia? He's been calling out the big names. They have a common denominator as far as an opponent's concerned between him and Triple G and Kamil Szeremeta. They face the exact same opposition. This wasn't a faster moving Kamil Szeremeta or a better versed version than that faced Triple G. They have a common opponent. What DAZN tried to put together here, they succeeded. They got what they wanted, and Jaime Munguia delivered. He stopped this guy in 6 rounds. Weak opposition, yes. But it definitely adds to the intrigue that you have an aging Golovkin with really good boxing, well-versed, well-rounded, versus a prospect who has been looking better and better each and every one of his last fights, definitely his last 3 fights, since he's had Eric Morales, the legendary Eric Morales, in his corner. And yes, he has flaws, but there's always going to be detractors. There's always going to be people saying that he has flaws. And maybe if he fixes this, then he'll be ready for so-and-so. Maybe if he fixes that, then he'll be ready for that guy. Just think about that. It's a non-argument. Why is it a non-argument? As I'm watching this fight and as the fight ended, I'm thinking to myself, what about Sergey Derevyanchenko? As it stands right now, Derevyanchenko has a 13-3 record. Think about that. 13-3. Jaime Munguia is now 37-0. The last 3 losses, the last 3 fights that Derevyanchenko has, or 4 fights, 3 of those 4 fights were losses to Danny Jacobs, to Triple G, and to Jermall Charlo. 2 of those 3 fights were highly questionable as far as the results came out. When he lost that decision to Triple G, people felt that Triple G got a gift. When he lost that decision to Danny Jacobs, people argued that it could have gone either way. He was that good, and it's because of his amateur record that he was able to land those fights early in his career. He's 13-3. Jaime Munguia is 37-0. How many more weak opposition do you want to put him, or subpar opposition, level C level rated or B level fighters do you want to put him in? The kid is asking to be the top echelon. He wants to challenge himself. Let him. He has the record to back it up. 37-0 with 30 knockouts now as he stops Szeremeta. And at the end of the co-main event, Gabe Rosado challenges Jaime Munguia. He wants to step in there with Jaime Munguia. And lo and behold, Jaime Munguia is like, if I cannot get a title shot, he became the number 1 challenger for the WBO and the WBC, which is Charlo's title. And he became the mandatory for the WBO, which is Andrade's. He's been asking for Triple G. This is what they try to set up with this opponent. And this wasn't a diminished version of Szeremeta that stepped in the ring. It was the exact same version that we saw in December, just 6 months ago. So it was a good test, and it was a good setup, a good line, a good measuring stick, I guess, to see what Munguia could possibly do against Triple G. Now, the detractors, or the people that are coming to save Munguia's life and saying he needs 2 more fights, 3 more fights, he's not ready for Triple G. You're probably right. He's probably not ready, but he does keep improving, especially in the last 3 fights since he's had Eric Morales by his side. He keeps improving. His head movement was on point today. Even though he still got hit a little bit too much to my liking. And everybody saw that. He got hit. He got touched a lot. And that's by a slow delivering Szeremeta. He did get hit. Munguia still gets hit quite a bit. So he still has to work on the defense, but very good body punching, very good attack to the body, very good successions, his punch succession, very good punch selection, and he had good combinations to back up those uppercuts that he was landing. That was a huge improvement from what he looked like last time out. So he's improving, and in one fight, that's what would make this fight intriguing, that the subpar defense that he has and the fact that he leaves his face so open would be the intriguing part if Triple G still has the power to put this guy out. The power is the last thing to leave a fighter, we know that. And Triple G is still levels ahead of Jaime Munguia, I get that. But the opposition makes for great fights, and Jaime Munguia in there with better opposition, I have no doubts that he will answer the call and come up, raise his level of boxing for that day. He handles a hell of a punch. He has a hell of a chin. And we would possibly see a performance like that of Derevyanchenko against Jacobs, like that of Jacobs against Triple G, Derevyanchenko against Triple G, Derevyanchenko against... Am I putting Munguia and Derevyanchenko on the same level? No. Just by the level of amateur record that Derevyanchenko has, the amateur experience that he had. But in the professional ranks, look at Derevyanchenko's record, 13-3 versus Jaime Munguia, 37-0. How much more do you want to protect Jaime Munguia? How much more do you want to baby him? 37-0. Yes, he's young, but how many more fights do you think he's going to end up with? 60 wins? 50 wins? He's 37-0 at the moment. And Triple G right now sits at 41-1-1 with the loss to Canelo, loss to Canelo, and the draw with Canelo. 41 wins, 36 knockouts. Munguia, 37 wins with 30 knockouts. He's right there. What's the difference? Because Golovkin has faced really good opposition in his resume, really good opponents, really good fighters, and he's also faced subpar opposition like Steve Rolls, like Kamil Szeremeta. I mean, Vanes Matarosian. Think about that. So he hasn't faced the best of the best, but he has faced some of the great opposition that's available out there, and he's faced subpar opposition as well. And that's been recent. In between those big name draw fights, Jaime Munguia has been consistently getting better and better and better. How much more do you want to baby him? If he's asking for those opponents, get him in there. This was a good performance by him, good solid performance, and any good boxer will tell you that they got to keep improving each time out. There's always something to do. Canelo keeps improving. Crawford keeps improving. Spence keeps improving. Pacquiao, just within a fight or two away from retiring, he keeps improving. Nonito Donaire, look at what he just did. They keep working at their craft. They keep improving these mistakes. And he has a legend by his side in Munguia, in which he's going to be able to get these errors fixed and tightened up, especially if it's such a big, high-profile fight that he'll be able to pick up, whether it's Andrade or Triple G especially. You bet Eric Morales is going to be on top of his game, getting Munguia to fix those problems. So it's not going to happen overnight. But Munguia keeps looking better, and I say get him in there. He keeps asking for these big names. Give it to him. Now, what happened in the post-fight interview? He ends up calling out Gabe Rosado. He's like, if I cannot get a title shot for my next outing, I would like to have a title shot to close out this year, and I'd be willing to fight Gabe Rosado. He called out Gabe Rosado. Gabe Rosado called him out at the end of his win over Melikuziev. That would be a great, great fight, a great step up in the level of Maciej Sulecki. Gabe Rosado would be that level. Maciej Sulecki beat Gabe Rosado, but that would be that type of fight, that type of level that Jaime Munguia, that people are asking for Jaime Munguia. That would be a perfect fight. Gabe Rosado, to me, is on the same level as the Danny Jacobs, the Deverechenkos, the Suleckis, the Andrades. He's at the same level as them. He never faced Jermall Charlo, but he faced his twin brother, Jermell. And Gabe Rosado has seen it all. He's been in there with the greats. He's been in there with Triple G. He's been in there with Jacobs now. He's been in there with them. He's, to me, a better version than, and a better challenge for Jaime Munguia at this stage than Maciej Sulecki would have been, even though Sulecki was a solid opponent. Gabe Rosado, to me, has seen it all, has done it all in the sport of boxing, and he's still there. He's that number one gatekeeper in my eyes. So if people keep saying that Jaime Munguia is not ready for a Triple G, then Gabe Rosado it is. And what an intriguing fight that would be. What an intriguing fight that would be. And maybe he'll get Triple G in December if he's able to lock this up with Gabe Rosado by September, let's say, in a few months' time. That would be really, really appealing and really intriguing. So we got the first set of fights out of the way. Let's enjoy the rest of the fights, guys. I'll leave you with that. I think the card for the Charlo Montiel fight is about to kick off here. And then a little bit after, we're going to see the Inoue and Das Marinas card with Michaela Meyer against Farias in the supporting fight for the Inoue card and the top rank card. So we still have some fights left. I'm glad that I was able to get this one out early, and enjoy the rest of the evening, enjoy the rest of the fight, and I'll catch you guys on the recap for those two fights here. If not tonight, then tomorrow, Sunday, as we sit here, Mountain Standard Time. So I will hit you guys up on the recap episode for those two events. And if I'm able to catch the Chavez exhibitions, then I will. Then I definitely will. I'll cover that one as well. Enjoy the rest of the fights, guys. I'll see you on the recap episode for the other few fights. Enjoy the fights, guys. It's still mid-Saturday here where I'm at. If it's a little bit later where you're at, enjoy the rest of the night. Grab a good drink. I got a good cold Modelo beer accompanying me here, and a few more inside that are chilling. I'm about to go pop a couple more open. Enjoy the rest of the night, and I'll catch you guys on the recap episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in to the Toma Todito show, and for all the love and support that you've been giving me this past year. Thank you guys. Love you guys. Have a good night.